All right, crypto market updates. For today's market update, we're going to make it a bit quicker, try to keep it within 20-minute range, and we'll do some shorter updates this week. I don't want to overanalyze this market to death. My plan is super simple. Basically, you have Bitcoin right here on the stochastic RSI. This is what I'm watching right now. It's starting to cross. See if we get some momentum here, or if we need to tag down to the lower levels. Where is the exact bottom going to be? Nobody knows. If this ended up being the bottom, then that would probably throw a lot of people for a nice curveball. So certainly watching this area. The reason why I say that is because it's not a clean 3K and it's not lower levels below that. But let's see. We won't know till after the fact. But generally, when the stochastic RSI starts to cross on the 1 week, we've seen fairly big moves in the market. We also have bullish divergence on the RSI on pretty much the majority of markets. Everything's still super correlated. Nothing's gonna really take off without Bitcoin's blessing at this period in time. A lot of interesting speculation in relation to the sell-off and all this kind of stuff. And I just kind of see, on a fundamental note, we know that the markets, Bitcoin market especially, is just supply and demand. And apparently there's been a lot of selling from miners in China. Perhaps there's also been some selling as a result of this Bcash hashing war. And this is generally, for the most part, this is why the Bitcoin halvings tend to be fairly bullish, because it reduces the inflation rate, which reduces the amount of supply that can be dumped on the markets from the miners, right? So the thing with that is, when you have more users coming in for whatever reason, last year we saw a huge rush of users. Basically, the demand was outpacing the supply, right? So the price is going up. A lot of those new users, pretty much anybody who was buying altcoins or buying Bitcoin or anything after last summer, probably ended up losing some money or capitulating and stuff. So obviously we needed market balance and market equilibrium. With market sentiment really low and in the gutter and the bear trend and the media basically doing reverse shilling, which is basically just fighting, finding things to blame, and so on and so forth. The mainstream media is kind of one of the reasons why people never buy at 200 and then they buy at 20,000. 20,000, they tell you it's so great, all your friends are getting rich and you're a loser. And at $200, like, Bitcoin's dead. Anyone who bought Bitcoin is a loser, right? Anyways, so they kind of fuel that cycle, and they do it in overdrive, right? Which is why it tends to be a really good inverse indicator. They just, report like what's right in front of you, and it's very popular for the media to just kind of create this FUD to blame this. They want to blame Tether, they want to blame exchanges, they want to blame Spoofy, they want to blame this, that, so on and so forth. So because of that, you don't have the same level of demand, right? So you end up having miners with more supply than demand, and if they sell, regardless of how they sell, maybe some sell OTC, maybe some dump on the markets to trade it, right? So I imagine it's probably mixed how they're selling. And looking at the overall crypto markets, so this weekend I sent out a basically a trailer and a watch list on Ethereum. If Ethereum gets low enough, I'm going to be an investor again, an accumulator. What do I mean by low enough? Well, if it basically ends up tagging, I'm not saying it will, this isn't even a price prediction. At this point, I'm not even making price predictions. I'm just looking at price zones and saying, okay, what am I going to do if the price does this? What am I going to do if the price does that? Right? It's a lot easier to do that than try to predict exactly what's going to happen. So let's just say, worst case scenario, that Ethereum comes all the way down to this zone right here, which is the previous all-time high in the last cycle. I'd say, I said between 20 and 50, I'd be interested in accumulating it again as a longer term investment. I might even be a little stingier than that and say between 20 and 40. You know, at $20, I'm certainly a buyer. It might not go down that low, but if it does, this is where I'd like to own some as just as an investment, right? Long term, just to hold. So that's not that wouldn't be a trade. That would just be an investment. To me, that would just be like ridiculously low, degenerate prices. And I'm not necessarily saying the prices will go down that low, but you know, it's possible. And if it does, I'm definitely a buyer at that $20 range for sure. A few reasons for that. Coming up in the next cycle in Q1 of 2019, we know we have Bakkt, we have Nasdaq, we have an Ethereum hard fork. I don't think we had an Ethereum hard fork for 2018. So this one's reducing miner rewards, which is also going to help reduce. So it's almost like a halving, which is also going to reduce the rate of inflation. And probably moving into 2020, it's going to move into proof of stake, Casper. I anticipate that leading up to that, there might be some FOMO as traders, investors, whatever, try to accumulate ETH, get as much ETH as they can so that they can make some passive returns, right? Kind of like, it'd be like mining ETH, except without having to buy any mining equipment. So if I do buy ETH down in that level, I'm holding it until at least 2020, at least until they go proof of stake. Depending on how the market responds to that, it could be a classic buy the rumor, sell the news. So if the market ends up FOMOing or bull trending leading up to that event, it could certainly turn into a sell the news event and lead to some market dumping, similar to what we see with airdrops, hard forks, software updates, anything like that. You know, tech releases, whatever, all this stuff, futures launch, all this stuff, right, tends to lead to classic sell in the news. Weed legalization, doesn't matter what the news is. If leading up to the news, if it leads to some form of bullish hysteria and bullish price action, then it's usually, it's usually leads up to selling anyways. So we'll see. Obviously, I wouldn't sell all of it. Maybe I would run a node, or maybe I would sell all of it and just buy back in after, on a dip or something. So I'm really, really thinking about the long term here. I mean, prices are so low that my timeline now is literally in 2020 to 2021, but I'm thinking out to 2020. So that's Ethereum. Aside from that, as far as like immediate ETH is concerned, I did flip some of my BTC into Ethereum to see if we get a rally leading up to their hard fork coming up in Q1. I think there's probably still some tax harvesting happening. We'll probably still see some selling into losses. If I look at Bitcoin to realize some losses before the year's end, if I look at Bitcoin, so regardless of if we bounce here or drop lower and bounce, the levels that I'm looking at, so 5K level. So these are basically targets that I'm looking at to sell some stuff. 5K, the 5,500 area, the 6K area, prior support turn resistance, and then leave a runner just in case it wants to actually go higher. If it makes it to these levels, maybe it'll sell off some more before that, but those will still be targets nonetheless, regardless of how low it goes. I kind of, because there's so much stability here in through this 6K area, and because it bounced so hard in through this 6K area, I wouldn't be surprised if this turns into a bit of a magnet area, right? Regardless of where the price goes, if maybe it goes lower, if it does go lower, then a magnet area just basically being like a midway point on the chart where the price gravitates and is attracted to and might have a hard time breaking through. I think if it were to break out of this area, I think that would be a very strong sign of a possible reversal. We'll probably see a ton of resistance in through that area, right, to break. So we might even establish an accumulation range below that area. We'll see where the bottom is on this. So that's pretty much that. And then anything I bought, like anything I bought investment wise, Tezos, Zcash, even if I scoop some up lower, I'm not going to be selling any until, you know, probably a few years from now, until certain price levels are reached. So I'm just going to hold those, and that's kind of my main focus, is how cheap can I get coins? And the cheaper I get the coins, the more capital I'm going to put in the investment bucket. If the lower levels are not reached, if we do not reach the 2K area or tag the 3K area or go lower, and we just bounce here, right, from this area, then I won't use all my capital. I'll still have some fiat that'll just kind of sit there that I'm not putting in at until those areas are reached, right? I'm still going to keep my Tezos and Zcash, and the rest, you know, some BTC long, some other altcoins, whatever. Perhaps I'll do some bag cleanup, lock in some gains on some other stuff, so on and so forth. I mean, if you look at alts in general, it's like I showed before, you know, a lot of alts just seem really, really dead. And what usually when they're super dead and the markets are completely broken, if Bitcoin had a bounce, in my opinion, I think we would see a lot more stuff like we just saw in Factom, where, you know, and you know what's ironic too is that I was looking at Factom when I sent out that trade where I said I was looking for bottomed out flat markets that had a sell off and kind of went flat. I was looking at Factom, but the volume was so low and it crawled so low in market cap that I was like, I don't know if this even has a future anymore, because I remember when it was a top dog and it was on, I don't know what page it was on, I think it was page 2 or 3 on CoinMarketCap. It slid down. Now it climbed all the way back up. I mean, it had to gain, you know, plus 600%. But look how fast that ends up happening, right? 1 minute it's completely dead, broken, crappy altcoin that everyone hates. Next thing you know, it's like the winter's champion, and it's the only damn coin that it's going up, type of thing, right? So just kind of see this across the board on lots of alts, and doesn't necessarily mean alts will reverse. They'll reverse when Bitcoin decides to reverse. So you see a lot of alts, you know, GNT kind of looks flat and broken, looks like a piece of crap, like a lot of stuff. So I think anything that kind of hits up into major resistance points are obviously, in my opinion, good targets. But this looks completely dead, like a lot of things. And if Bitcoin were to bounce, I wouldn't be surprised to see stuff kind of move with it and gain with it. But chances are that unless they completely decorrelate for whatever reason, chances are if Bitcoin keeps dumping, that won't happen until it hits a bottom and starts to bounce. On the smaller time frames, there's a lot of noise on the smaller time frames, and there's a lot of big kind of movements to mess with traders' minds. So I think, high leveraged traders that are trying to scalp are probably I think they'd be getting chopped up for like 6 months, right? Because you have these where it looks like it's going to break down and then it spikes right up in your face. Just every time, you're on the bleeding edge, it's like, oh no, it's breaking down. Boom, this happens, right? And I think this is really the result of futures and high leverage positions. This is what would most benefit traders that are on the right side of those trades. But I think a lot of traders are probably just getting chopped up. So there's a lot of fake outs, like this and so on and so forth. So we'll see if this holds up, but not really making a prediction as to whether it will or not. At this point, I actually don't really care. If it goes down lower, I played a game of, okay, well, how low is this stuff going to go and how cheap am I going to be able to buy and add to positions? And if it bounces, it'll be like, okay, great, positions will flip into green. Can do lighten up some bags and lock in stuff that was bought at lower prices. So fairly simple. I'm not trying to overthink things, but my main focus is really on the big picture. I'm thinking a few years out. And the reason why I'm doing that, if the market wants to reverse a lot faster, if the market just wants to like completely V-bottom and reverse and go in a bull trend without a prolonged, gritty accumulation range, then fine, then I'll be pleasantly surprised. But I want to kind of just think about, what would be like the worst case scenario from a trading perspective. And in my opinion, the worst case scenario would be like a 2015 type 11 months of sideways grind. In my opinion, that would be the worst case scenario as far as a trading perspective is concerned. But the best case scenario from a investment perspective, right? And so, like I said before, in 2015, I felt it was a blessing that I had 11 months to be able to accumulate, right? Someone saying worst case scenario could be 2015 times 2.5x. Yeah, that's certainly possible. You never know. That's certainly possible, but I don't know if it would last several years of accumulation. There's a whole bunch of new players that will come into the market as far as the demand is concerned. Anything is possible, of course. But yeah, if it went all the way to the halving, then Bitcoin's halving was in the summer of 2016, I think. So it kind of broke out of the accumulation. So if it had a 2.5x, then I guess the accumulation would last into that area. And if that's the case, then obviously that's why I want to prepare myself and just kind of load up my bags more of as a longer term investor, maybe trade less, and we'll see what the markets produce. 30 years of gold accumulation, this is true, but the thing is that after there was gold ETFs and such, the markets did make some very big moves, some big advances, and so we're kind of cooling off from a parabolic move after the whole 2008 crash or whatnot. We still have a lot of these investment products still in the process of being released and created. So I'm kind of still of the mindset, I don't think that we would have decades of accumulation or anything nuts like that. You never know, but I'm of the mindset that we'll have a quicker cycle once those new products are created. And then after that, if we have another massive cycle, then I think it would probably take a very long time to recover, which is why I'm kind of almost basing my timeline and giving myself like I'm treating the next cycle like it's the last, because I don't know if it's just going to keep going and going and going, right? So that's just me, because I think the next cycle will probably see many new users, maybe in the hundreds of millions or so on and so forth. But that's all speculation, right? That's just the timeline I'm going with. Other than that, Maybe I might, if prices get lower, maybe I might start looking into some other type proof of stake type coins that'll self accumulate. Try to find good ones, but they won't be as heavy as my Zcash or Tezos positions. I like stuff. I want to hold stuff that kind of self accumulates in a hardware wallet. I like the idea of that. Cardano. I was kind of thinking about Cardano. I heard that from what I read, there's a lot of stuff that has yet to even be live or activated. And that's still very much, I don't know if, I think they only have like a few nodes and so on and so forth, but I'll have to look into that more. But there's a lot of features that they haven't even released yet. And so I guess one of the reasons why I picked Tezos or start to accumulate Tezos once the network went live is that it already has all its features in it, and it'll just keep adding new features through the governance process, such as zSnarks, which they're working on now, and we'll probably just see it continuously absorb new features from other projects, or at least that's my hypothesis from a fundamental standpoint is concerned, which in a few years should make it a very, very interesting blockchain in a few years if it starts integrating all the best features of all other blockchains a lot easier. So we'll see how that plays out. But I did buy some more at the 30-cent range. If we hit 20 cents or lower, then I'm gonna double my entire position. And so, can you delegate cash to Zcash? No, you can't. You can't delegate on Zcash, but I think it's still proof of work. A lot of miners have been capitulating. There's a lot of crypto business that have been capitulating. Capitulation takes on many forms. When miners or businesses go bankrupt, that's a form of capitulation. It's not necessarily just investors or sellers that, not investors or traders that sell. So we'll see how this, crypto projects like CFI, stuff like that, that's all capitulation. Dev groups, that's all capitulation. But, do the opposite. While all those people are capitulating, I personally think it's a good time to start building crypto businesses, right? The time to build, in my opinion, the time to build crypto businesses or build mining rigs or build all that stuff is during the bear trend, is during the accumulation, during the low point of the bear trend. Let me specify. Obviously, we've crossed this line. We're now in the lower sector of the bear trend. We don't know exactly where the bottom is, but we know we're in the lower half, right? Which is better than anything up in the higher half. And we've started to see a lot of businesses kind of go bust. But in my opinion, this is the time in the lower half to really bootstrap crypto businesses if one wants to create it, whether you want to create new software, a new mining operation. Because if you can bootstrap and start building the infrastructure of your business when everything is low and in the gutter, nobody wants crypto, it'll be difficult, right? It'll be difficult to get your business off the ground and stuff. You're not going to get injected with all this cheap, free money that everyone was throwing around last year during all these ICOs. You probably have to bootstrap on your own budget. But if you do that and your business can survive with the low prices and go through the worst hurdles, when it hits the next bull cycle, it's just going to be on the up and up. So in my opinion, it's probably a lot better to do that now than to, do that in the highs. What happened was a lot of people, and I actually knew one guy who started a mining operation up in the highs here, and he went bust even before we broke down. If you do that when everything's so hot and prices are high and you have your timeline, your projected revenue, and the cost of the equipment and the cost of everything's a lot higher. Well, guess what? With all these mining companies capitulating and stuff, I bet you the price, and with the stock of the graphics card manufacturers in the gutter, I bet you the price of, mining hardware, GPU cards are probably a lot cheaper than they were last year. I haven't verified this, but I would imagine that you could probably get some wholesale discounts from other mining operations that went bust that paid a lot more, that have to sell at a loss to try to recoup some of their costs, right? So the time to buy your graphics cards and set all that stuff up is when it's cheaper. And if you can have enough cash flow, or just have enough of your own money to make it work in the lows, then it goes on the up and up. You know, BitMEX, they launched in like 2014. They really kind of started working at it in 2015. They were a nothing exchange, and then now they're like the dominant players in this bull trend. They're just making billions of dollars hand over fist, right? And they built the rails of their products, right? Binance was launched in the bull trend, and they couldn't even meet demand. They couldn't even meet user demand. They had to shut down. Mind you, a lot of exchanges couldn't either. So in my opinion, even though it would be more difficult to start a crypto business in the lows, I think if one can start one and survive, then you've set the bar really, really low. So when it breaks the